This is the power movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week I head up to Pemberton, BC to sit down with Kye Petersen at his compound. We did the interview outdoors next to a river, and it's raining, and you can't tell any of that. You may hear the sound of a truck going by, but this came out sounding way better than it did in its pre-edit form. And Kye Petersen is one of those dudes that could be way more mainstream than he is, but the way he's done things, he hasn't really been pushed to the forefront of skiing as much as some of his peers. And while there never has been as many marketing dollars behind Kye, his skiing has always spoken for itself. If you've seen his movie Numinous, which is scary to watch at times, you know what kind of skier Kye is. Kye's style on and off the hill is one of a kind, and his story is one of loss and then finding himself. Before we get into his amazing story, I want to ask you to please follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement, tell your friends about the show, and support my amazing sponsors. They are Evo, Rescue Water, the 10 Barrel Brewery, and Spy Optic. Now, let's talk to Kye Petersen. Another smoky morning here in Pemberton, British Columbia. I'm sitting here with Kye Petersen on his little compound. All these pro skiers that I go visit seem to have a compound. And Kye, tell us about, hello, first and foremost.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, man. This compound that you have is quite awesome. There's a few different skate features, a couple different things that you have on the property that makes it totally unique. 28 years old and you're living the dream here in Pemberton.
Yeah, I guess so. It's definitely been my dream. Dreams can be reality, I guess, if that's all you want.
Yeah. You bought the house at probably the right time to buy a house. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago. Yeah. And has it doubled in value?
Almost, not quite double, but everything in Pemberton, it's starting to kind of plateau and drop back down right now, I think. But the value of property in Pemberton's gone way up, and just we've seen the whole sea to sky from Squamish to Whistler blowing up, and Pemberton's, it's the last place to blow up, and that's why I like being up here. It's nice being north of Whistler, but we're seeing it kind of happen, and yeah, it's cool though. It's nice to see it grow a little bit.
I used to come here all the time during the ski camps, stopped coming right before the Olympics, and what are the big changes that I would notice walking into this place?
It's hard for me to even say because step by step, there's just little things that just change and change and change, but I think for me, a lot of it is just like the people, the people that I grew up with in Whistler, a lot of them aren't there anymore. People spread out across the sea to sky area, and that's been the big change, and then the ski hills obviously changed a lot too, and just the development of the whole village in Whistler and everything,
Vancouver all the way up to Whistler, it's like the real estate's stupid, and it sounds like it probably is here too. Speaking of stupid, your last ski season kind of sucked for you. How do you injure your ankle the first time?
Skateboarding, I injured my foot last fall, and it was sort of a break sprain, and the foot is really complicated piece of the body, so I took my time to heal up, and I had a pretty good season, actually. It just wasn't a full season, and in the spring, I just kind of focused my time on a few separate trips, and was busy because I was still touring my film Numinous from the year before, and ended up just traveling a lot. I was in the States, bouncing around to different cities, doing shows at Patagonia stores in January, and then I did a tour to Japan with the film in February, which was super fun, and got to ski as well. That was my first time back on snow after the injury. Yeah, and then just other little things from then on, film festivals and stuff. So I was kind of busy with that, and then ended up doing a couple fun trips that I had always wanted to do in the spring around here. So yeah, it was all right.
And then did you break your foot again?
It was actually kind of a different injury due to the fact that my foot was still lingering a little bit throughout the season, and skiing was fine. But yeah, I ended up tweaking it again just coming out of the ski season. And it wasn't nearly as bad as the first time. And now it's actually feeling better than it ever was. So.
But another thing last season, I think you were still skiing on Forefront skis. But long-term ski sponsor Forefront, turmoil within the company, and I don't know if it was turmoil because I wasn't there. I don't know the details, but Jason Leventhal ends up buying Forefront, a company started by Matt Sturbins, and Matt started it to create a skier-owned company that was going to represent the pro rider in the right way and make the right products. And Jason Leventhal also does that. Jason ends up buying Forefront. When he does, I think the team dissolves shortly after that, and you're without a ski sponsor. How does that shit go down for you?
Yeah, it was kind of a crazy quick change in the company. For me, it wasn't a big surprise, I guess, or deal, because I already was on my way out. At the same time, seeing everything within the company change, like from Matt's office he built, going to 10 employees that you would walk in there and it was this full ski company, to like literally just him in a room and Thane in the back pressing skis, like what it was, I guess, this past winter. Pretty crazy to see that change all go down, and you couldn't really do that to a company to begin with if it hadn't been like for what Matt built.
You put a lot of time in. Are there mixed emotions with the company? What are your thoughts? Because Jason Leventhal's a respected guy in skiing who's done a lot of the right things for skiing, and not saying what he did buying Forefront was the wrong thing. It's probably a great business move for him, but it ends an era of Matt Sturbins almost. I mean, Matt now is totally out. I think he put his notice in a month ago and he's doing something else now.
That's a crazy change, but Matt was there for 15 years from the start and just grinded the company to the top, basically. There's not many other companies out there like Forefront. And I think it's smart for Jason. And also, for Matt to get out of there probably too, it's a good thing for him. I think he could use that change, and like a lot of us need in our lives.
It'll just be a different world not seeing Matt at a lot of places that you're used to seeing him.
Yeah, and I think Forefront will be kind of seen as a bit of a different brand now. It's not the same.
There's no argument there. I think their sales model, their marketing, and everything has changed, and it's all been pretty quick. And the one thing is the price points look to have come down, which is a good thing for the way that Jason's running his business. But that's a totally different story. So you have a project in the works. When did you start working on skis, and what are you actually working on? Give us all the details on what will be on your feet next year.
I guess last year I was just kind of skiing on a bunch of different skis and testing a lot of different stuff. And even with Forefront in the past 3 or whatever years, I worked on my ski, put in tons of different versions on it till we came to one that went to production that people saw and bought in the stores for my Kye line with Forefront. And then there was more changes to be made. It takes a lot of time and testing, and it's like skis are one of those things where once you make a good ski, tiny little changes can make a huge difference under your feet. You start feeling that, and part of that's like motivation towards going back out there and performing differently in the mountains, So you start really noticing it. And anyways, I started working with them to make little changes to those skis, but that never came to production just because all the money and time and effort that went into producing the original versions of all those designs. It's a lot of work that goes into making new shapes and molds and stuff. But I got to test different stuff and knew what I wanted to change. And then now again, I've skied more. And this year we're starting up a new brand here out of Pemberton. And we are going to use my knowledge I've built over the years of shaping to kind of push good shapes you believe in and good quality, strong skis.
Well, the good thing here is you're not starting a ski company from scratch, because there would be a whole lot of legwork there. There's already an established guy who's been building skis for a long time that you have backing you, that you're going to create a line of skis under your name, and it's going to be produced with him. So you're going to be able to tweak and make whatever you want ski-wise, and you're going to create it differently than a lot of skis have been made.
Yeah. I'm working with in Pemberton here, and he's not extremely established, but he's locally established as a ski builder and has been building unique skis made with mostly yellow cedar up here for the last 7 years or so. So really it is like a startup in a lot of senses, because we're also kind of starting from the ground up here. We're making an effort to put out a line of skis up to, we'll see how many we get to, but right now we're working on 3 skis to start, and this year we're just going to do a limited release.
So you have something to ski on this year?
Yeah, for sure. It's been fun testing some stuff, and it's looking really good right now. We've got really good shapes, and we got a really good crew behind it. Yeah, I couldn't be more happy.
Well, that sounds like a nice change of pace for you from what you've experienced before. You get to keep it local, and you can grow it within the Whistler community. Hopefully it builds out of here, and with your name, it should do pretty well. But you happen to be one of the original Whistler locals. And when I say that, I mean, there's kids that move here when they're like 12 that might be part of your crew, but even the Pettits moved here at one point. But you're one of the guys that were born in Vancouver and grew up in this area?
Yeah, I was born in Squamish Hospital.
Okay, even closer.
Yeah. I grew up in Whistler.
And you were born into the ski world. Your dad, Trevor Petersen, he was a fucking badass. He was a free ski pioneer, not just up here, but globally. He helped change the way people look and feel about skiing in general. And if it was the day of the internet, he would be everywhere, but all his stuff was analog. And you get to be 6 years old and your dad passes. Do you even remember that? I mean, I guess 6, you probably might.
Yeah, that's like kind of the start of your memory bank. I guess you start losing more when you get older, hey?
Yeah.
You know, you do. And I was young at the time. And yeah, I remember.
Is there anybody else in your family, or is it just you, your mom, and dad?
No, I have a younger sister, a year and a half younger.
Shattering for the family. And I mean, we don't have to talk about the pain you are when you're at 6 years old, but I think when you're growing up your whole life, because I see it with Ayla McConkey, and I think it's the only kind of comparable thing I can see, although she's not as serious as skiing as you are, but she lives in a town where her dad passed. And every day people say things about her dad and talk about her dad, and your dad was the greatest person ever. Oh, he was so awesome. He'd be so proud of you today. And I'm sure your whole life was that. Did that bother you growing up?
No, and I don't think it was always like that so much. Definitely, yeah, once in a while you get people saying that. For me, it was like kind of followed in my dad's footsteps. But then I'd have people say, like, you don't have to follow right in his footsteps or whatever, you know what I mean? And put that pressure on yourself. And that's not like how it was for me. And I did things differently too. I think that the sense that maybe my dad was kind of the same. He sort of grew up mostly without his dad and taught himself a lot. And I just feel like it was the same thing for me. I just had to teach myself a lot. And I just chose to teach myself about my surroundings. And, you know, my dad put me in a place on the earth that was good for that. And I was left with a lot of good mentors surrounding his passing. So that really helped.
Yeah, I would think there's a crew of guys that take it upon them to make sure that you have a person to look up to. Who's that crew when you're growing up?
It was that for sure. I was on my own a lot too, though. My mom really made a huge effort when I was young to put me in those places that was going to allow me to grow into skiing and skateboarding and all the sports I do today.
Do you and your mom get along when you're growing up?
No, it was tough for sure. Like, to this day, my mom's working out crazy demons. When I was younger, I was getting out of the house a lot, and I think that's how it was for me. It wasn't like I was following my dad's footsteps or anything, but I just happened to take to skiing, and I would usually go skiing as a way to kind of escape whatever was bugging me in my life. So at home, I had a lot of issues with my mom, and at school, I had issues and all this kind of stuff. At the same time, like, we all loved each other. It was just tough, I guess, you know. My mom was like trying to raise us in a hard situation for her. We didn't have any money to really do a lot of things. So for me, it was like I could just grab my skateboard and go to the skate park all day, and it was like easy way to do something.
I hear you were kind of a punk kid in the way that if someone said something to you at age 12 and that person was 30 and you didn't agree with them, you'd be like, hey, fuck you, man. This is how it is.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I grew up like surrounded by a lot of older people, and maybe grew up too fast as a kid in a lot of ways. And it was always kind of, fuck you, I'm going to do it my way. Because I always felt that if I worked hard at something, I could do it. I guess it's like that. But at the same time, like, I learned a lot from other people and from just sitting back and listening. Did
that attitude ever get you in trouble? Because being a dick to adults when you're a kid, although you probably don't think you're being a dick, you're just being whatever, they don't like that. And do you ever get in trouble for that?
Yeah, for sure. I grew up like being taught I had to have a lot of respect for my elders and people like that. But I guess being out there in the streets and hanging out as a kid at the skate park and places, like, you end up having to take care of yourself a lot. So I think I grew up maybe being a little more defensive than some people, trying to protect what I thought was mine.
And ski-wise, do you have a pass and are you skiing every day? Is that pretty much what you do?
As a kid, yeah, I was up there a lot, for sure. As much as I could be, I was always on the hill.
Do you guys live in Whistler at that point?
Yeah, I grew up in Creekside in my younger years, and then like through high school, I lived in Alpine. So I would just, hitchhike to the hill or get a ride or whatever.
You are the only male in your house, and I would think a lot of extra duties would be put on your plate. I don't know if you accepted them.
Well, yeah, I had no choice, really. I guess I was the only guy in the house, and I had to look out for my mom and my sister, which was not an easy job.
And it's not something you asked for, it's just something that's thrust upon you.
Yeah, for sure. And then I also left the house early too because I was hanging out with older people and kind of had these opportunities to not always be at home. So I was able to kind of learn a lot, just street smarts and people smarts just from hanging out with people that are older than me and going to new places and not just, staying at home all the time.
When you're a little kid that's as good as you were, it makes people laugh, smile, and want you to be around all the time. Look at what this little guy's going to do. He's the future. You happen to have that, and that's where you meet everybody, is through skiing?
Yeah, mostly through skiing and sport, skateboarding is another one, and everything I do. But yeah, no, skiing as a kid, I was meeting a lot of older guys on the ski hill and basically following them around.
The Chris Turpin type guys? Or?
Yeah, Chris is a really good example. I mean, used to stay at my mom's house all the time when I was younger and, take me skiing and whatnot. Even before that, too, my good friend Austin Ross, he's probably the first guy I started really skiing with. I kind of really didn't start skiing until I was about 10, almost 9, 10. I kind of really started skiing, and Austin was already doing 360s and stuff. So I was like, oh, that's cool. And then the twin tip skis were coming out around that time.
So this is what? 99-ish?
Yeah, 99-ish. Yeah, exactly.
There's a big scene in Whistler as it is, but are you into magazines and movies, or do you guys not even think about that?
Oh, yeah. That was all it's all about. It was right around that time I saw 13 and Global Storming. Those two movies basically changed my life. I was starting to snowboard at the same time too then, so I hadn't really committed to one or the other. I saw the whole new school ski movement that was happening and then watched those movies and obviously was aware of the rap films and the old movies my dad and those guys were into, which I thought was cool. But then this whole new transition to skiing was wow. And I had already been skateboarding. Skateboarding was kind of my first sport as a kid. Yeah, so I thought that was super cool and started following these guys around the hill. And I ended up doing a little bit of freestyle for a couple years just because it was a way to hit a lot of jumps and learn stuff. But then I started just escaping that and going and meeting Turpin and these guys in the train park and riding the train park. And then older guys that were my dad's age, Bruce Rolls was kind of the first photographer I ever shot photos with as a kid. And Bruce took me out to go ski off Blackcomb Peak and DOA and do the first backcountry kind of stuff. I was kind of already doing all that. And then when it would snow on the ski hill, we'd naturally be, hitting cliffs and doing this and that. So I really kind of just grew up skiing the whole hill. I would go up there for a day by myself and knew where to find all these different people. And yeah.
Cool. Well, I'm going to take a really quick break, talk about my sponsors. My first sponsor is Evo. And if you've been to evo.com, you know that Evo creates the best user experience, has the best brands, offers a low price guarantee, free shipping on orders over $50, and a no-hassle return policy. Well, if you haven't noticed, they're also helping change the world of retail. The store creates events around the sports we're passionate about, they build communities of like-minded people, and they make a difference through giving back. Evo has stores in Denver, Seattle, and Portland, and soon they're opening up stores in Whistler. To find out more about in-store events or to buy the things you're going to need this winter at the best prices, head on over to evo.com. My next sponsor is Rescue Water. When I first started drinking Rescue Water, it was a bottle before bed after big nights and I'd wake up feeling awesome. But Rescue Water has so many more benefits than just after big nights. It's all about being proactive in your recovery. And Rescue Water is proactive recovery for when you get off the mountain, out of the gym, or done your sport. It's a difference that you will feel, and it will hydrate you so much better than your traditional sports drink. Next time you're at the store, grab a Rescue Water. Or head on over to rescuewater.com, enter the code RESQWATERTPM, that's all one word, and you'll get 20% off a 12-pack and become a believer. Those are my sponsors. A weird part of your childhood, I won't call it weird, but is there a year that you moved to Hawaii?
Yeah. Well, my dad passed away when I was 6, as you said, and then it was about a year and a half after that or something. My mom took me and my sister to Hawaii. I don't know if I should talk about this either. I don't think it matters anymore, but we lived there for a year and a half. We weren't American, right? So we had to like do some under the table stuff to get us in school, and we went to kind of a not that most ideal school, but it was super cool. And I started skateboarding when I was there. My mom was into surfing, and she just wanted to get us into something different. She needed to leave for a while, and whatever. We ended up coming back a year and a half later, back to BC though.
When you came back, that's when skiing starts for you a little bit more?
Pretty much, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so skateboarding you pick up in Hawaii. Do you surf when you're there as well?
Yeah, I started surfing when I was there. When I was 8, 9, and then didn't surf till I was probably 14 or 15 or something like that, or 16 maybe.
And that's a big part of your life now? Like surfing,
sure.
And just, I mean, even with your ski design, you're influenced by surf, and you want to shape your skis, and you want it to be surf-inspired almost, I'd say?
Yeah, I think it's just naturally similar in a sense, you know? Planing on snow or planing on water, it's different, but similar in the sense where those small changes can have a huge difference in the ride.
So you get back to BC. I'm going to say, is that when you meet the Pettit kids, or did you meet them before Hawaii?
They weren't here before that, I don't think. Or, yeah, they probably moved here like right around then, I think. And then Callum was the same age as me, so grade 6, me and Callum started hanging out.
I would say you, Callum, and Sean, you guys probably picked on Sean all the time, but took him everywhere that you went. That's just what you do with the little brother that you're going to allow to hang out with you. But you guys lived charmed lives here in Whistler based on your ski ability. And that started pretty early. I would say a year or two into it, you guys were all getting different sponsors. Sean and Cal were getting the same, but you end up on Rosignol and Oakley. They end up on Oakley and K2. How does the whole sponsorship process happen for a little kid?
It kind of happened before I started hanging out with Cal and Sean, I guess. I was like grade 5, 6 maybe. We had a little crew called the 7th Season Crew. I kind of developed with friends that were my age right around the time I met Callum and Sean, and we all rode together, snowboarding, skiing, skating, whatever. But my first sponsor was Oakley. I got noticed by a girl, Jen Friesen, that was like a local rep around here, and I was just starting to do tricks in the park, I think, and stuff like that, and I was doing like 360 mutes over the hut jump. I think she was skiing with Dan Treadway, actually. Treadway probably can tell you. And then, yeah, Treadway told her, oh, that's Kye Petersen, whatever. And she hit me up. I got a pair of goggles shortly after that. I think actually sent from Pat McIlvaine, who was the Oakley guy who supported my dad. And
a legendary Oakley figure who was recently departed, but a legend in that world.
Yeah, exactly. And then soon enough after that, Seb, the Canadian guy, was sending me product. And then I was flow rider for Oakley, where at that same time I was trying to get on skis, not as a sponsor, but just being a small kid like that. There was no small twin tip skis. And like I said, me and like my friend Austin had 13. I had Global Storming. We were watching all these movies, and all of a sudden like skiing was just like life, you know, like overnight.
Well, it got really cool right at that time, and it was because of the new products that were changing it. I mean, if you go back and you look at those movies now, the level of the tricks were nowhere close to where they are today.
But pretty wild for how it started, you know, like you used to watch like JP and Rodeo 7s back then, and it's like, holy crap, like just invented that and did that.
And everything was new. I was thinking more the Global Storming side of things, but yes.
The big mountain skiing was pretty radical at that time, though, because it was, I think, when people were starting to straight line and more shaped skis came out. It just changed quickly, I guess.
Yeah, people probably have 95 centimeter skis under their feet, and they're like, we have powder skis. Yeah. It was a totally different time. So the ski sponsorship eventually happens too. I mean, are you, as a kid, making any money, or is it just purely product the first couple of years?
No, at this time, I wasn't making any money. And then for skis, I was trying to get on a small enough ski, and the Solomon 1080 had just dropped, and there was like a smaller size, I think. But then before that, as a kid, like Rossi was like the dominant kind of brand here.
Yep.
And they were just dropping the Pow Air, I think, just shortly after the 1080 came out. So actually, I bought a pair of 1080s because I really wanted to ski on the twin tip skis. And then the next year, Rossi was like, oh, they didn't want me on those or whatever. So I think I was around 12 or something, and 11, 12, and they started sponsoring me. I think I was 11. I think when I was 12, I was officially sponsored by them and had like an ad in the magazine when I was 12.
And how is your rebellious, I say rebellious, like asshole kid, punk kid, whatever you want to call it. But how does that side of you do with the sponsors? Because are you the ones dealing with them, or is your mom involved, or is it all you?
It was mostly me. I mean, my mom would obviously tell me things to do, I guess, or whatever, but...
Did you listen? You didn't seem like you'd be a receptive guy to feedback.
No, I was, I think. Nothing was proven, really, either, you know what I mean? It was kind of just like, try this, try that. I was lucky to have the right people in my circle, like, working with those team managers and stuff that kind of brought me on. It was sort of, they taught me, I guess, and I just was, like, forced to learn.
Yeah, and I guess with Oakley, with that team manager, was that Strokes back then?
Yeah, so, like, I guess Strokes, like, shortly after all that stuff was kind of my guy.
Did he help you out big time in your career?
Big time, yeah. I mean, like, for me, the most, like, career-wise, like, business, I guess, sort of stuff, just over the years, it was really Greg bringing me on board with Oakley, and he was a massive guy involved, and then Patty Kay with Rosignol, you know, and then Eric Iberg. Those three guys probably did more for me in my career than anyone I can think of, or off the top of my head. But
speaking of Iberg, at what point in your life do you start smoking weed?
Me?
Yeah.
So, you know, I tried it when I was younger, but I didn't really like keep smoking it when I was really young. I mean, I was been exposed to all that kind of stuff since a young age.
You grow up fast in this world, and Iberg becomes a mentor to you, and you're traveling with Iberg. You're probably, 12, 13 in the Pop Your Bottles days?
No, Pop Your Bottles, I was 15, I think. And then, 14 when Dubsky came out the year before that. I think I had one shot in a Matchstick movie even when I was super young. It was like the first shot I ever had in a movie, and I was kind of like had this momentum. And then Tanner and these guys were coming up to Whistler, met them, skied with me, and it was really Tanner that brought me on. I didn't really like look at Iberg as such a mentor at the start. I just got invited to go down to Utah and go skiing with them, and Iberg was there and Iberg was filming, and we kind of met through that. And it just happened to be that the first ski movie I bought, because I got Global Storming given to me from Peter the Swede Matson, who lived down the street, who started Bella Cool Heli Sports. Anyways, I went to a shop in Whistler and bought a ski movie because Austin had 13, and I bought Royalty, which was Iberg's cult following movie.
Yeah, for sure. Put him on the map.
Put him on the map, big time, yeah.
The people that were in that movie, too. Like, it was like the A-list of A-list. I mean, some of them are still skiing today and are like still royalty in the ski world. This is amazing.
Yeah.
At 14, that puts you at grade, 8 or 9 here in Canada?
Yeah, grade 8, I think, yeah.
Okay, and then 15 is grade 9. I don't know if that's the year that you drop out, but eventually you drop out of high school.
Yeah, it wasn't like I dropped out. I never dropped out of high school.
I'd say dropped out when someone stops going.
I was getting these opportunities that were coming at me, and I was like, well, I got to take advantage of these.
Yeah, you can't say no to them.
For instance, when I went down to Met Iberg, I was going down to Utah, stay with Tanner and CR, and they wanted to ski with me, film with me. He just was stoked. So I was about 14 then, I guess, and I was already going from school and leaving for weeks at a time, and I'd have homework with me, I remember, and I was trying to do it, but it's really hard when you're like traveling on the road with guys, 8 years older than you, and you're trying to do your schoolwork and stuff. And then I come home, and to begin with, I never was doing so good in school. Not that I couldn't, but I had to try really hard at some classes and had a really hard time sitting in class for a lot of it. So I really learned a lot of my stuff just from experience,
From just traveling and...
Yeah. So I came back and I was doing school here, but I had to start doing some classes at like an adult learning center at night.
Okay.
And at this time there was... Down in the States, they had this since like even guys like Tanner were younger, but up here they didn't really have anything for us. I don't know. I was like a test subject, I guess. I think nowadays if you grow up in Whistler as a kid, which is pretty hard, it's a different demographic, I guess, but they're privileged to have different schools that will guide skiers through their early careers to make sure they finish and do it all right. Sean was lucky where he kind of was, it didn't really hit him till later and he was kind of able to finish his school and stuff, and maybe he just did better in school too, I don't know. But for me it was really tough, and I ended up getting pretty much done with school when I was 15. What
does your mom say to that? Because I look at it from your perspective. I'm 15 years old. I can travel the world. I can do all these things. School's always going to be there. And I don't need it at this point, especially if you're kind of like a hard-headed kid who wants to do things your way. It's why the fuck do I need to go to this thing that's causing me so much pain every day when I can go ski and get paid for that?
Yeah, that's the thing. I'd go on these trips and be gone. And then when I come back home, I felt like I needed to be doing that, and I felt like I had to like prove something too. I was the young kid who was getting sponsored, and some people aren't that happy about that either. I got a lot of heck for just having a dad who had that kind of legendary status. So it was like, I think a lot of people thought it was like spoon fed to me, like this kid's just getting hooked up because he's so and so, And obviously it helps growing up in the right place, but because of that, I remember when I was like 14, 15, had those first video parts, I was skiing with Tanner and all these other guys. I already felt like I was being compared to these guys like Tanner and the older guys I was skiing with, so I felt like I had a lot of work to do. I was like, well, I want to prove that I can do it. Not just to these other people, but I want to prove to myself that I can do it, because who knows at that point, even myself, I was like, I had a lot of work to do, I thought.
Because your dad is established as a fucking badass. And some people, like you said, are going to look on paper and be like, oh, he's just getting hooked up because of his dad. Other people who actually see you ski are like, this kid's going to be amazing, and who get what you're able to do at that age and what that's going to be when you're older. But is there something inside you that's like, I have to prove all these people wrong, that I'm here because of myself and not because of my dad?
I mean, I've always just been really hard on myself, and I think that's like another reason why I had a hard time in school and a hard time at home and a hard time even not freaking out and getting angry when I was skateboarding or skiing, because I would really, my whole life, have kind of always like had a vision and get quite determined, because it can be hard on yourself and you don't really reach it. So as a kid, I was like always trying to reach that sort of, and yeah, just it keeps my mind focused, I think, in a way too, and it's sort of like a meditation.
Keeping your mind focused just brought me back to where we were a minute ago. We were speaking of Iberg and asking when you smoked weed. And you said you tried it when you were a child, which made me think, do you look at your childhood as being completely robbed? Not robbed, but you were never really a kid. You never had the Disney World vacation. You probably didn't do any kind of shit like that. You were just focused on skiing powder or skiing whatever you could. I
just grew up, like, even outside of skiing, I just grew up in Whistler and was hanging out with certain people. It's not like, I guess, like the safest place for a kid just to be running around, in a lot of ways. So I drank and smoked and did that stuff when I was super young. I think I was like, I don't know if I should even be saying this, but I think I was like 12 the first time I smoked weed, grade 5 or something. And then I didn't start smoking weed again until later. And it was mainly because everyone at that point in high school is starting to smoke weed, and a lot of my friends, we would go to the village in winter at night and like get dime bags, throw down on a blunt, like roll a big blunt, get high, walk through the stairwells at night, and like just like, just be kids and run around town and like do that kind of stuff. So, and then I go on these ski trips and all these older guys are smoking, and for the first couple of years I wasn't really smoking at all. And then at some point I was like, I'm dabbling here and there, and next thing you know, I'm like 14, 15, smoking weed every day almost.
That happens in these resort towns, and when you were 14 and 15, it was looked at as a bad thing, but we're in Canada now in 2018, and this shit's legal. And I don't know what the laws are going to be here, whether you could grow some at your house or not if you wanted to, or any of those things.
Yeah, 4 plants, I think, is what they're saying. It's legal to grow.
Will you join in that movement of being your own farmer and being able to take care of yourself through gardening?
Yeah, I like growing stuff anyways. I have my gardens, and yeah, why not? It's nice to grow your own and know what's in it,
Back to skiing. In your ski career, there's a lot of filming that goes on, because you might have entered contests when you were little, but it never seemed to be your thing. I mean, did you ever do well in like the contests at the terrain park?
Yeah, that's how actually it all started for me. Like at the same times, I was like with older guys once in a while, getting taken out to ski backcountry lines and learn that stuff, and free riding on POW days with like local snowboard clubs and groups and ski clubs. I was in the park, and then every couple weeks they'd have this Sprite series on Blackcomb Terrain Park. And this is before Sean and Cal. I think it was like the second or maybe third year I was doing these little events. I kind of got Cal and Sean in on it because we were starting to hang out together anyways. And I was like, you guys are like really sick. I don't think they realized how sick they were. Because I didn't ski with anyone my age or younger than me. I skied just with guys like way older than me, So it was fun for me to bring them in. And Austin Ross was the other guy I kind of skied with. Me and Austin were doing these Sprite series. He's 2 years older than me. Then Cal, the same age as me, and then Sean, a year or two younger, 2 years younger. It was kind of like really cool. I always wanted to have this group, I also looked at like the way it was for my dad, and I was always like, oh, he had the sickest partners. Like, they had such a cool thing going. And I always wanted to create this, ever since I was young, I wanted to create the same thing here and create our own posse. And then it created more like fun and competition and feedback between each other. And you start like feeding off each other. And I was still skiing with the older guys, but kind of brought them into it. And right away, obviously, Sean was a natural and Cal and too. And it was fun. But yeah, I did the Sprite series every year. And I think I won a bunch of those, as a really young kid. And then that was kind of it. They were like really small contests.
But like in Whistler, though, I mean, when you have a contest here, the ability of the kids here is above and beyond most places you go.
Yeah, and when I first started doing it, there wasn't really many kids. Like, it was just like me and Austin and a few others. And then, because there's like age categories, but it didn't really matter because, like I said, it started kind of growing. We had this little posse. And then I was still skiing in those contests with like guys like Chris Turpin, Mark Abma, Oakley White Allen, Rex Thomas, all these like kind of early park skiers from Whistler.
Oakley White Allen, that was a character that I haven't really heard about in a long time.
Oakley used to hike the pipe all the time and do all those Sprite series too.
Did he pay for lift tickets or no? Or did he just come here and hike up?
Oakley lived on couches and undergrounds, and he'd sleep in locker rooms and stuff. And he was a full ski bum here for a few years during those early park skiing days.
I wonder where he is today.
I do too. I want to see him. Hopefully see him soon one day. I think he's in Utah though.
So you get through the whole contest situation and you're doing that for a while. Do you eventually just get sick of competing because it's always like you have to be the best, or are you fired up on it? Because it doesn't seem to me like you like structure that much in terms of, I don't see you being a team sports guy, although I could be wrong. I don't see you needing coaching. Being judged probably bothers you too.
I don't know if it bothers me. I think I judge myself on what I do anyway, so I actually like it. I think when I was super young, though, I was a good skier for my size and my age, but I always saw myself like trying to strive towards competing against guys like the Tanner and these older guys like Turpin and stuff. At that time, I still wasn't quite there, I was just learning all this stuff and learning from them, and because of that, I'd go to these contests and didn't really have any chance of making the finals. I think a few times I came close. Well, and Rossignol, that was just the natural thing to do, too. My first sponsors, they were like, okay, well, this year we'll bring you to the U.S. Open,
And that was what you did back then?
Yeah, I think I was like 13 or something like that. So I went to the U.S. Open a couple years in a row, and that was really cool. I was still there to see, like, Mikal and all these guys, like, win those big events, and it was a really cool time in skiing. So I learned a lot from skiing with all those guys going to those events. I think the first trip I did with Cal and Sean, where we actually traveled, was both of our moms came as well. We went to Breckenridge for, I think it was an X Games qualifier or something like that. We were all super young. So we did like do some of these events, but I didn't really see it as a competition. And then I didn't really compete again after that for a while. By the time I was like 15, 16, I was filming. I was like, at that point, I was like, yeah, I kind of saw myself at the level with these older guys. I was like, I can be doing some of the same tricks and or skiing the same terrain within the same realm as them. So it like makes sense. I'm like relevant now maybe. But that was mostly in the backcountry and off like backcountry jumps and lines and things like that. And, I still was riding the park, but I started seeing it as more of a way to like keep my skills going. So when I go to the backcountry, I can do it. And I saw the backcountry as a giant skate park, So it was way more interesting to me, and there seemed to be so many more opportunities.
I'm going to take one more sponsor break, and I'm going to start with Spy Optic. Spy has been around since 1994, so they have a long history supporting snow sports. And this year, they've produced the best goggle ever made, the Ace EC. That's a bold statement, but it's 3 lenses at the push of a button. I asked pro rider Eric Jackson if he had a chance to try the goggle.
Dude, I have. That goggle is a game changer. It's crazy. It's pretty insane not having to ever change a lens. You literally have one lens and it's go time for everything.
The Ace EC is a game changer, and you're going to have to pay full price for the best goggle in the world. But to save 20% on everything else Spy, Head on over to spyoptic.com, place your order, then use the code capital TPM, the number 20. That's all one word, and you will get that 20% when you check out. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery based out of Bend, Oregon. They are all about drinking beer outside and supporting snow sports and culture. They really put their money where their mouth is, and this year there's a bunch of projects that prove that. There's the Pray for Snow movie, which 10 Barrel is the only beer company to ever produce their own ski and snowboard movie. They're also working with Mike Bassich to build a Snowcat mini pub, and they'll have their Hella Big Air contest this year, March 9th at Copper Mountain, March 30th at Mount Bachelor, and there will be one more TBD location and date. So next time you're at the store, make sure you pick up some 10 Barrel and support the beer that supports you. You can find all about the Hella Big Air, the movie tour, athletes, and more over at 10barrel.com. Those are my sponsors, and now we'll get back into the podcast. So 2005 rolls around, and you're going to be part of a big production, a Hollywood production, and you're going to go to Chamonix with Glenn Flake, and the goal of the trip is to ski the line that took your dad, and that's some heavy shit right there. Before we get into the movie and what a production like that is, how well do you know Glenn Flake?
I didn't know Glenn. Obviously, I knew who he was, like, legendary. And Mike Hatchett was supposed to be on that trip, too. And it was this big Hollywood film proposed to us, and we were, like, really hesitant, just, like, my family and everyone. Just kind of like, oh, like, this guy wants to, like, talk about my dad and all this stuff. But didn't really tell us a whole lot. It was kind of a weird situation there from the get-go. But anyways, yeah, of course, I'm going to go get paid. Like, I got paid a little bit to go do the movie, too. It was, like, commercial style, so...
Paid pretty well? Like, you make a good salary from that?
No. From all that stuff that happened, I didn't make any money. Just on that trip for 2 weeks in Chamonix or whatever. I just remember me and Ivrig had $75 a day to spend. And I probably made $1,000 or something. I don't know.
So you didn't make a lot of money?
No. But it was like a way to go to Chamonix, and I was like obviously nervous. My dad passed there, and I knew I was going to go there at some point. You know?
Yeah.
But I was young. I was like 15, and I had started skiing the backcountry here. You know, I was ski touring already and getting out there, but that was a huge step. But also weird because I get there, and it's a full friggin' Hollywood movie set. And before going there, I kind of needed someone to travel with at the time, or I'd take letters on my trips from like a parent or something, and then like get picked up by another person or travel with guys like that. So I had been filming with Iberg. We shot Dubski the year before or whatever, and it was like, all right, perfect. Well, Iberg can come shoot because he's a filmer and be like my guide basically to travel with. Chaperone. That's yeah. Anyways, so yeah, he's my chaperone, and we get there. Cool for him, of course. He was like Blake's one of his idols, so it was like really just cool to be involved in. And then we were gonna double it up and stay longer and go shoot at an Oakley house and meet up with Mikal in Switzerland afterwards, which we also did. And I'm 15 at the time. Meet Glenn and all these guys and super crazy scenarios with film crew, and no one knew what to do in the mountains.
How many people are there? Like 30?
Yeah, exactly. Like huge.
They just don't get it.
No, totally lost. And Chamonix is just looking at us like, what the fuck?
You look like the biggest junk show in town.
The biggest junk show in town. And that was interesting for me. I remember, like meeting Glenn and hanging out with them. And that was kind of cool because with the guys, even that were doing a lot of like helping with the camera assistance and just portering with heavy loads with all the gear that people were taking places. I met Nate Wallace and a couple other guys in Chamonix that are still good friends of mine today.
So you're connected there now.
Yeah, so after this trip, it was like really odd. So anyways, a week into the trip, Fan, who's one of the guides for all this film crew and a legendary skier and guide in Chamonix, he falls in a crevasse, goes 70 feet down and breaks his leg and is really hurt. So this puts like a huge shock on this film group, right? And this whole film group's being run by a guy named Bill Carrig, who's like from Utah or something, and he was supposed to direct it, but he's got, I don't know, money coming from somewhere else, and there's other people involved too, and he does this trip and doesn't really know what he's doing so much sort of thing, and doesn't actually really know the backstory behind it. He's trying to tell too well. He just really likes it, you know, he's a big fan of skiing and was like, wants to tell a story, so that never ends up happening. The movie from that trip that he worked with those guys, somehow it all falls apart and the directors don't go, but after Fan fell in the crevasse and was really hurt, after he almost died, I should say, we still got out there and I got to see a few places in Chamonix and skied the Glacier Ronde, which is the run my dad passed away on. That was cool. We leave there and I go do a trip to Switzerland with Iberg and, hit some jumps and do some filming, kind of more park stuff and things like that. But I get home and I'm like kind of drawn more towards the mountains at that time. I think every year from then on, 16, 17, 18, 19, I was going to Chamonix once a year. And the second year I went back, it was one of the only trips I did at the time that wasn't for filming. And I went and just skied with Nate Wallace and slept on his couch for like 3 weeks or a month and experienced Chamonix for real, like not with a film group,
Yeah, I haven't been there. But you talk to anybody who's been there who likes to ski, and there's like an aura and a vibe around that place. Is there a way to put it into words that makes that place so awesome?
It's crazy. Like, I knew going there it had a lot of history, and the guys that inspired even my dad and Coombs and all these guys to free ski in Canada and in the US. It kind of was all inspired by the extreme guys in Europe, like Ensemble and Valençant and all these guys. So going there, but then when you step into the valley, you actually feel it. It's so old, the culture there. It's such a strong mountain culture, and even skiing itself is respected so highly. Where here, like I even said, like with going to school and shit, it was like none of my teachers were like, they weren't helping, because they were like, what the fuck's this? What's he doing, skipping school to go skiing? Like, he's wasting his life right now. But over there, it was a lot different. Like, if you were a skier in France, it was like you were highly respected. And even ski instructors over there, it's like that's like a well-respected job.
Different mindset.
Yeah, totally different. So you really feel it when you get to Chamonix and like the history, and you bend your neck way back and look up at the mountains, and they're just like towering over you. So it's got a really ominous kind of vibe.
And with that whole movie, you ski that line. Is there any pressure relief or anything that's over?
Yeah, it was just the whole thing was really weird, like I said, with the whole film group and stuff. So it was the time when we were in the couloir and actually skiing. We weren't actually with the film group anymore. I was just like me, Blake, Patrick, this guy Bertrand is like a snowboard filmer. His wife was actually having a baby, and halfway down he just took off and started pinning it. We were like, holy shit. But that was cool because we got to kind of separate ourselves from the hectic scene. So I just knew I needed to go back and really experience it proper the second time. So that's why I went back and did it like the kind of ski bum way and actually learned about it.
What did you think of the movie?
So then that movie got canceled. It wasn't to come out at all. It wasn't until like 5 or 6 years later that Bill Carrig somehow got some funding together to like scratch the movie he wanted to make up. So the movie that was supposed to be his turned out to be Steep.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I guess there was a bunch of talk about my dad and Eric in that movie and stuff.
For sure.
It wasn't really done very well. It was kind of a weird film. And then Bill was like, okay, he wanted to still tell the story about this hectic trip we had and about my backstory, I guess, more. And we were kind of like, oh, like, okay, I guess, like, do it. And before you know it, he was just making it. And I didn't really have any say in it, and I didn't get paid for anything. So I was quite bitter about that movie for years after. Anytime someone brought up the word Edge of Never or whatever, and the name too is like, oh.
Yeah, he's standing on the edge of
There
never.
were so many things to do with that movie that if I could have been involved, it was really just, it was this guy Bill's story, and he wanted to, within his story, he was talking a lot about us, and I just knew that like the history he talked about wasn't all so accurate, but it was just the way it is. I was like, all right, whatever, fuck it. I'm just going to forget about this and keep doing my thing.
Another time I was taken advantage of. I'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll try to limit those in the future. No one
Yeah, totally. And is this around the time, maybe a few years later, but you end up transitioning over to Forefront?
Yeah, this was a while after this still. So yeah, I was like traveling out of the States, going to those events, and then I was starting to do the film thing.
And you did the film thing with Iberg, the first couple ones?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the first shoots I did was like I was going down and filming for Dubsky 106 and then Pop Your Bottles. That was like the first year where those guys were like, you're losing the little kid style now,
Yeah.
Shortly after that, Rozzy was taking me on some trips, and actually I think I was 16, I did my first TGR trip.
That's the next company you work with filming, right? Is Rozzy's paying for you to be in TGR?
Yeah, for a couple of years there. So yeah, that was the first thing there, and then I shot with TGR for a bunch of years. I think I was in like, I don't know, 5 of their movies or something.
How was that experience? How was working with those guys?
That was cool. Yeah, that was, from like 16 to 18, a huge step in my career. I was still filming with Iberg and Poor Boys stuff that like Tanner was doing, but was also doing a few TGR trips a year. So I started to ski with guys like Ian McIntosh and Sage a little bit, and later doing trips with Seth too. And it was just a really good experience as well. I think I was 18 when I kind of had a breakthrough and had a good segment in TGR's movie at the time. I was still small and young, but was able to push it with all those big dudes.
Everybody in the ski industry knows who you are, but I would say the ski industry is like the core of the people that work in it and the athletes and whatever. The ski enthusiasts and the skiers, is that when they figure out who you are is through TGR? Because with Pop Your Bottles and Dub Ski, they didn't have the distribution as TGR. And yeah. I feel like maybe it's what puts you on the map as a pro skier.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like, it wasn't until I was like 18 and 19 I started seeing myself where I figured I could compete with the best dudes out there,
And this is what, 2008, 9?
Yeah, and I think 2008, it was Lost and Found movie came out. I had the second segment in that with TGR, and yeah, I was going out and filming with Ian McIntosh around the backcountry in Whistler, and I was starting to hit really big drops at the time and doing pill lines and tricks, and I think that I got like breakthrough performer maybe at Powder Awards that year. I think it was for TGR, but at the same time I had just filmed Tanner's first movie with CPE, which was Believe, which is also kind of a big hit, I guess, around that time. So I was like 16 or 15, 16. Yeah, 16. So both those came out that year, and I think really put me on the map.
Right around that time, you go to Cold Rush, which is a Red Bull contest that's like a really big one. I always say that it took from the K2 Back 9, if you ever heard of that event here.
Yeah, for sure. I was wanting to do that so bad when it happened, but I think it's too young.
Yeah, you're too young, man. One of those things. But you win that contest in 2009. You're 19. I don't know how old you are. But, I mean, that's all the badasses in the world in one spot for you. In terms of contests, is that the crown jewel of what you've had so far?
For me, yeah, I guess so, because like it was the 2 years before that, from 16 to 18, I was getting recognized, and then it really put me on the map. So I was like, okay, Rozzie's re-signing me, Oakley's stoked on me. I'm like, got these people backing me, so I was like, oh, I can do this. And then I was seeing myself at that sort of level, I guess. It was 2009, 19 years old. I went and did that. I missed the first one. There was another Red Bull Cold Rush before that I didn't do, and then, yeah, the one at Retallick was the first one I did, and it was just so fun. I just remember having such a good time there, and I think I had been to Retallick just the year before that, shooting with Believe and Tanner and those guys, so I kind of like felt like home a bit there.
And that's a fun place from what I hear.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, not just the terrain and stuff, but it's just like a good time all around.
Yeah, totally. So that was just a really fun event, and I had people backing me, like Patty K's on top of the lines with me, like being more than just a team manager. It was pretty awesome. And yeah, and I guess I ended up winning that event. I sort of surprised myself, I think, a little bit too.
I figure that the thought process isn't going in for the win. It's like, I'm going to ski and have an awesome time and see some people that I haven't seen in a long time. And it's going to be a really, really fun time. And if you win, then you go home and you're like, holy shit, and I won this.
Yeah, like everyone was there. It was like just to be there with everyone.
Getting the invite is the win.
Yeah, and the snow was awesome too. Like, I feel like I always thrive in contests like that where the snow is good, And there was a lot of fresh snow in that event and some big backcountry booters they built, and it was like really ideal. And then to end up on the top of the podium standing next to JP and Sage, to me, it was like those two guys were like my idols, but like for the years before that.
If you were to have a picture framed in a trophy room, which you really don't have, you have an area where all your trophies and shit are. But if you had one big frame picture, that would be a cool one to have.
That's true. Yeah, I don't even know if there is a picture. I'm sure somewhere. But yeah, to me, that was amazing. I was just like, so cool. So, I mean, from then on, I was like, I realized, like, yeah, I think I can do cool stuff.
Well, you're one of those guys with the ability. I think you were in a town one year where the Freeride World Tour happened to be. And you're like, fuck it, I'll enter it. And you did. And then you won that contest. Yeah,
that was cool, too. I think Candide had just done the Freeride Tour before that, maybe. And I was filming and doing other stuff at that time, but I was like, Candide did it, and he had some good conditions in a couple of those events, like Chamonix, and I was like, fuck, I really want to do that. And I really want to be there if Candide's there, And then he didn't do it again. He won it that one year and then took off. But I went and did the one in Chamonix the next year after that, just as a wild card. Just wanted to kind of try it,
Yep.
I was like, this is kind of fun. I think I got 5th or 6th, but I ended up crashing or like putting a hip down in the middle of this line. And it was really bad conditions and super bony. So there was like kind of a situation that I don't really like in contests. It's really nice when you can kind of go there and use the conditions to your advantage.
Yeah, I mean, with those event organizers, they put a lot of money into creating the infrastructure. And if the weather looks like you're not going to get snow for 4 days, sometimes there's nothing that they're going to do for you. You've traveled halfway across the world. The webcast is set to go at this time. Yeah, if there's a weather hold and you can't see, we might have to do something. Yeah. But yeah, it's a business.
It was still really cool, though, like a good experience, and I loved Chamonix anyway, so it was like just a good way for me to go there and see some friends. I had been traveling there a few times before that already and like kind of had some older mentor buddies, and yeah, it was just really cool. I knew I wanted to do one again at some point. So the next year there was one in Revelstoke, so it was the first time the actual world tour was going there, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. In January I go to Revelstoke anyways, and the snow conditions were pretty good, and I think the first day is like the big day where they cut everything down. They would do like a qualification day just in like kind of pillowy tree zone and really fun terrain. But I did well the first day. I think I had the highest score by quite a lot, and then going into the second day on the big Mac face or Mac Daddy or whatever in Revy, you drop last, I guess, when you have the highest score. So I had to drop at the very end of the day, and the run was kind of hammered out, but it was still cool. And I threw a 3 in the middle of the line, like in a kind of exposure area, and hit a couple big cliffs and just skied a smooth line. I think I had like maybe second or third highest score. So they add up the 2 days, and that's how you, I guess, win, which I think is kind of cool. I don't really like the idea of just one run. At the end of the year, you're a world champion because you did 6 runs. It's like, I don't think you need to do a little more than that. You would look at like golf or normal sports, like even surfing and skateboarding contests. They got to like skate all day or all week to win an event.
Yeah, true.
I thought it was fun just to be able to ski for a few days like that.
Another big part of your career, or a big movie, I'd say probably the biggest movie you've been a part of, in my opinion, All I Can. It blew up. JP had that tree line in the neighborhood.
From Nelson and Roslyn and stuff.
Yeah. So JP had that line that got shared like 645 million times, and it was a big deal.
Yeah.
And you were part of that movie, and that's the next big surge in your career, is that movie where there's a lot of attention around you at that time.
Yeah, totally. I also started doing those contests a bit at a time where I didn't have a whole lot of outlets. I was getting invited on trips. I'd go on these TGR trips or whatever, I'd get invited on, but then if like politically it didn't work for me to be there, I didn't have anywhere to be, so I wasn't really creating my own schedule. And then I was like, didn't really have anyone to film with anymore at that time. So it worked out perfect that I kind of met the Sherpas through working with Rosinal. Actually, Eric Croslin we shot some short videos. I went to Alaska and did some stuff in Revy, and when I was with Rozzy, and then met him, and from there he left Freeride Entertainment, who he was working with at that time, and started just full-time with his company. He started with Dave Mossip and Malcolm at Sherpa Cinema, or Rocky Mountain Sherpas at the time.
Freeride Entertainment holds a grudge.
Yeah, D-Rocks. Croslin was one of his good guys, and then he left, so it was a big deal for them.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was like perfect timing, and they were about to make All I Can, so we kind of started working together that way. And even when throughout All I Can and Into the Mind movie, like even when my sponsors weren't really paying them a lot of money, they were still wanting to shoot with me.
And that doesn't always happen.
No.
One thing we didn't talk about, and I think it's always important to do, is who's paying you? Because you seem to make a decent living here. Can you make 6 figures being a skier? In Canadian. We'll go in Canadian toonies.
No.
Can you do close to that?
6 figures?
6 figures would be like 100,000 Canadian.
Yeah. It's not easy, but yeah, for sure. It's possible. I mean, in Canada, it's really tough, though, because there's always 1 or 2 guys that are able to get paid a lot, but the money's all coming from the States,
Yep.
It's the way it's always been, even with my dad and those guys back in the day.
Yeah, the U.S. group's paying you, and they wish you were American because you'd be easier to market and sell skis to Americans. But you are not American, you're Canadian, you live in the place that you need to be the skier you are, and they still pay you because of that.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been lucky enough that I made it happen, and try to keep it going here. And, you know, I didn't grow up with anything I have now, so I'm super thankful that I was able to actually utilize my career to create that sort of somewhat dream that I always wanted.
You invested your money in a place where some people sometimes spend their money on bullshit, and you weren't probably buying rounds at the bar for everyone all the time, and you have a really great compound here, so that's amazing. Who makes that happen for you? So you've got, what, Monster, Patagonia?
Yeah, Patagonia, Monster, Oakley, Buff, Neckwear. Now we're working with Foon and Kai Shapes for this new ski project.
You've got a good list of sponsors there. At this point in the show, I do something called Inappropriate Questions.
Okay.
And I had Sean Pettit ask you 3 inappropriate questions, but he actually only asked you 2. So I will come up with a third one, and I will involve him in the third one.
Sounds fun.
So Sean is the little brother of one of your great friends growing up. He was also a great friend.
Yeah.
But back then you picked on him, beat him up, and did all that kind of stuff with Cal, and it was totally cool. We are going to hear is Sean's first inappropriate question.
When we were kids, what did you have Split's Grill make you, and you took that, and then you ate it off the sidewalk?
Yeah, actually, I can't really remember what I was eating off the ground. But yeah, when we were kids, I used to hang out in the village lots, like I was saying, and Split's Grill would be where we'd go, or 7-Eleven for drinks after skating. And I didn't always have money, so I would do things for food.
Okay.
And I think it was probably one of the people in the kitchen that got the idea. It was someone made something out of
Dog poo they made.
Yeah, I don't know what it wasn't real dog.
No, they made it look like dog poo.
Yeah, they made it look like shit. So it was like something that looked like shit, and I went down in the middle of the street in front of the Splits and pulled my pants down and looked like I was taking a dump in the road. And maybe I went back and ate it. I don't know what that.
I heard you went back and ate it. And there was a bunch of old ladies watching.
Yeah. We liked to do pranks when I was younger. We were really into, like, you know, pranking people. That was pretty funny. I think because of that, I got like a free burger out of it or something.
Okay, so there's always a reason for those things.
Yeah.
Question number 2.
What's your craziest movie premiere tour story?
Sean knows that you've been on a ton of movie premiere tours in your life. You have been traveling a good portion of your life for movie premieres in the fall, and there are crazy stories that go along with it, especially when you're doing it from like 15 to 22. And what is the craziest story that you have from your days on the road?
Oh, man. I don't think the one that Sean's referring to is definitely in Montreal, I'm pretty sure. Because we were all there. I think that was maybe Believe or Show and Prove. Yeah, Show and Prove, maybe. One of Tanner's first movies. Yeah, we were at one of the first like IF3 festivals or something like that. And Callum and Sean's dad's was in Ottawa at that time, so close enough, and he drove out with like his full RV, the Groove Meister setup.
Yep.
Had his limo and shit, so we were driving around with him. I remember everyone was just drinking and hanging out in the RV, and Tanner was with us too, and Tanner was getting lit up, and it's been such a long time, it's hard to remember now. We're going into, what would it have been? Maybe like this ceremony kind of thing to the whole festival, but it was like in a bar, you know, and whatever. Tanner's like climbing on the friggin' second story balcony thing and like ends up falling off and hurting himself that night, I think. But whatever. Tanner does the classic rant in front of the whole giant crowd in Montreal, and then they ask like, oh, do you guys have anything to say? They're talking about the movie we just filmed and some stuff, and I said something to the crowd on the mic like, rollerblading's not cool or something like that, and I guess in Quebec it was still kind of a thing, and I was like, you know, skateboarder, I didn't like rollerblading, and I was trying to like push these guys to stop doing these rollerblade style tricks on skis at the time, I guess, and I say something like that to the crowd, and everyone wasn't too stoked about that, I remember.
Well, it makes me jump into my third and final inappropriate question, because Sean only came up with 2. Yeah. I happen to rollerblade. I don't do it much anymore, but I definitely see that there's animosity between rollerblading and skateboarding like there is between skiing and snowboarding, although it's getting better on that side. But back when you were a kid and there were snowboard parks, the snowboarders like Mike Ranquet didn't like skiers. They were like, fuck you, you guys are all words we can't even say anymore.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, like, it was different back then, you know, like, as a kid growing up at the skate park. Actually, one of my first homies in Hawaii was a rollerblader and used to like film us and stuff like that. So it's not like I didn't like rollerbladers, but then they'd come to the skate park in Whistler and like bikers and rollerbladers would always be getting in the way, not knowing the lines. It just wasn't cool, you know. I just thought rollerblading was so whack, and because skiing and rollerblading is like you're standing in the same direction, like hockey skating or something like that, it seems sort of relative, you know. But I always tried to make it different because it just felt so different. I mean, I never even grew up playing hockey. I can hardly even ice skate, which is kind of funny being Canadian. But skiing to me is just a different sport altogether. But then snowboarding, you know, I snowboarded a little bit as a kid too, so I always rode with snowboarders and things like that. I actually was the only skier to ever go to Superpipe snowboard camp when I was like 12 years old, which is a snowboard camp up on Brome Ridge. They used to hand dig a 22-foot Superpipe up there every summer. And they had a skate ramp up at the lodge that was up there and stuff like that, or that still is, the old Frank Zappa building or whatever. Yeah, so like I was kind of accepted by these guys, but at the same time it was like, well, you know, you're a skater. You know, I was always skating, so I had a lot of heck for skiing, yeah, for sure. All the snowboarders like, why don't you snowboard, man? But skiing was so cool at the time, I thought, too, and it's a really versatile sport, you know, and I took to it.
That really wasn't a question that I asked, but you were able to elaborate on it, so I will ask one more. No, don't be. That was good. It answered whatever I didn't ask. But Sean Pettit now is 50-50. He's like a skier and a snowboarder now. Do you think Sean will be able to have a successful career skiing and snowboarding? Because it's a tough thing to do, and it's never been done by any person other than Sean Palmer and Jimbo Morgan, but I don't think those two count in this respect.
I don't know. I don't know if he'll have a successful career at it. It's hard to say, really. I think he's lucky enough to have like gotten to the point where he is now with everything he's done that he can kind of have the freedom to explore that, you know?
Yeah.
So I totally understand that, and I totally back it. It's not like any big surprise to me either. Like, we've all been riding snowboards or no-boarding or splitboarding somewhat here and there, you know, and there's always been a lot of skiers out that are pretty good as well. Like, even just look at like Jossie Wells. I see him like post pictures of him snowboarding, do like crazy tricks.
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit. You know, and then for me, like, you know, when I snowboard too, it translates pretty well, you know, like naturally. I mean, I surf and skateboard. When I get on a snowboard, you know, already skiing too, you're used to standing on top of big pillow lines, on top of jumps. You're used to the scenario. You're just standing on a different board and you're riding a new tool, right?
Yep.
So Sean, I think, really quickly was able to like get on a snowboard once he got some like decent board control. He could do big mountain airs like 360s and ride lines and stuff that I think a lot of other snowboarders can't because they haven't had the years in the mountains like he has, you know, on skis or whatever it is. So he's got that for sure, and it's super fun to watch. Like, we all snowboard a bit too, but I think Sean's kind of taken it to the point where he's like almost trying to make a career out of it. It's just fun, you know, for him too to do something new and like be like good at something else, you know. But yeah, we all snowboard a lot. We have for a while too, and that's like one of my biggest passions. I'm just not like super like public about all the board riding I do. I prefer snowboarding, like, or pow surfing without bindings. That's like one of my truest passions. But it's like there's no career in that.
Yeah, yeah,
know?
It's just fun.
It's just what I do. So I try to keep a bit of time every winter to get out there on the board, and I do want to keep progressing that sport too, because there's so much you can do on a pow surfer that still hasn't been done.
That is Inappropriate Questions, and that's pretty much our podcast. So it looks like a life for you is in a good place. You've got some exciting things on the horizon, being that you're going to be designing and shaping new skis. And I thank you for your time. It seems like you went from a pissed off younger kid to a pretty level-headed adult, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't think I was ever super pissed off. Just, yeah, I guess hard on myself. But yeah, I'm pretty chill, pretty happy. It's just nice to be living the life we all are. We're lucky to be here.
So that was time with Kye Petersen, and looking at his life, it's almost kind of what you would expect. A kid loses his dad, doesn't have a ton of guidance, and becomes the derelict kid with a ton of talent and a hell of an attitude. And then he grows up, his God-given talent shines, and he makes a name for himself in a positive way. The thing I take away from Kye's life is that life dealt him lemons early on. And what did he do with those lemons? Well, he squirted them in a lot of people's eyes at first, and then he figured out how to turn those lemons into lemonade. And now the future of Kye Petersen is his own brand. And unfortunately, this future won't include Oakley. They were his first sponsor 17 years ago, and they're a changing brand, and they've dropped Kye Petersen. So it's a big time of change for Kye, and that's exciting. So we will see how the future and everything else plays out for Kye Petersen. Now, I want to thank you for listening and thank my amazing sponsors who make this show happen. They are Evo, Rescue Water, the 10 Barrel Brewery, and Spy Optic. Have a great week, everyone.